Hello and welcome to Visiting Dugout. I am Crystal O'Keefe of Southside Sox, and this is a Fans First Sports Network production. Today I have a returning guest, Dream, on to talk about the Orioles. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, been an O's fan for pretty much my whole life, so pretty diehard O's fan. It's great to see them actually, winning some games this season. I work for FTN for the numbers. I do their baseball content as well as manage the betting content side.
Nice. So, first question: what is new in Baltimore this year?
Well, we got a bunch of young kids playing pretty good ball for the Orioles. A really deep lineup and almost not enough spots for all the talent that they have. I know we were talking, in the preseason about potentially putting a package together for Dylan Cease. Maybe they'll be talking about Eric Fedde in a couple months. But yeah, it's a really deep lineup. They've gone through some injuries on the pitching side, but they're starting to get a little healthier, and they're recently talking about going to a 6-man rotation. So we might be seeing that this weekend in Chicago.
Must be nice to have six pitchers that are at least good. I don't know what that's like anymore.
Good, and then probably decent human beings too, which is always nice.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Um, Speaking of young kids, what is going on with Jackson Holiday right now?
Yeah, they I think he's been doing honestly, I haven't checked in on his numbers. I know he did a little bit better, was doing better a couple weeks ago. They really wanted him to work against like left-handed pitching. If you watched him when he was up in the majors, they were just getting him out the same way, right? It was like high fastballs and then like sliders at his feet that he was just like swinging at. People were giving him kind of a hard time, but I think they forget how young he is. I mean, the kid can't even buy booze. So if it takes him a couple more years to be major league ready, I'd be fine with that. So he's just at AAA, getting batting leadoff and getting his reps in down there.
Yeah, he's even when like he's got what a year until he can buy booze, and even then he looks perpetually 14.
No, he literally does. And honestly, if you look at the pictures of when they drafted him, even the pictures of this year, like he's definitely bulked up. He looks bigger,
Yeah,
but yeah, he still looks like you might have to check to see if he actually has a driver's license. Like he looks that young.
my son turns 14 in July, and they have the exact same like baby face. So I
Yeah,
love
that's
it.
exactly it, right? Like he'll get carded for beer probably for like another 10 years. So
Oh yeah, at least. So how would you grade the off season for the Orioles this past off season?
Um, I was probably a little too hard on him for most of the offseason. The Burns trade didn't happen till a little later than expected. I was a little disappointed that they didn't go after more like mid-level starters. Kind of looks like they don't really need that at this point. But spending that much money on Kimbrel when I wasn't really sure how big their free agent budget would be kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And they didn't really spend that much after that. But he's been okay. They kind of moved him to seventh inning out of the closer's role for a bit. The Burns trade was massive, right?
Yeah,
But we talked about all their hitting depth. I still feel like they could have swung a trade for another established starter, and I really would have liked them to get Cease in addition to Burns. I think that would have been a really huge get, obviously. But Mike Elias kind of does things under the radar, right? We'll grab a couple guys for pretty much nothing, and make a tweak or two here or there, and they'll get the most out of them. Like this kid Suarez that they just moved him out of the rotation into the bullpen. I think he was out of baseball for, I don't think he pitched in the majors since 2019 or 2018 or something like that. Was topping off at 92, and they have him throwing 98 miles per hour somehow now. So he obviously doesn't go after the big names, but he gets the job done. And what's really exciting is we finally have a new owner that loves baseball
I was
and
about
is
to ask
committed.
you
And
about that.
he's a legit fan too. So maybe their strategy over the next couple of years will change a little bit in free agency.
I have enjoyed seeing pictures of him just out just meeting fans, sitting in the stands. I'm just like, he seems, I mean, like, I hate all billionaires, but he seems like good. It's like him and Pritzker in Chicago. It's about it for billionaires.
No, there's not too many good ones. And if you know, they have a splash section in Baltimore, where I think it's after every extra base hit or run, they spray the fans with a hose. And he actually did that for a game, which you won't see another owner do. And I thought that was just really awesome. And like you said, he's walking through the stands, shaking hands, taking pictures. Like, he's a real fan. And I think it's cool to have someone that appreciates our love for the team and also loves the team himself. Because I know what you're going through. We had one of the worst owners in sports that ruined my favorite team for a
Yeah,
number of years, and not only in baseball, but there's hope for you guys, and hopefully, someone will save the team.
we'll see. He does not want it to fall to his children, at least. So maybe a good person will come in. I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully,
He ruins two of my favorite teams because he also owns the Bulls. So
yeah.
just
Well,
miserable.
we're both kind of together in misery there. As a Wizards fan, not
Mm,
don't get to do much celebrating myself. So
yeah, I feel that. I'm happy for my child who is a Pacers fan, um, because they just beat the Knicks. That's about all I know. I don't follow them, but I'm very happy just for him. So the O's are just 2 games back from the Yankees. The Yankees have been red hot, and they came in and teed off the White Sox. I know I talked on the Yankees podcast about how like Stanton isn't having such a great start. Soto was slowing down a bit, and then they all were able to just have consistent hits and home runs. So how does this O's team compete against them? Like, how do they make their way to first, or are they going to make their way to first?
honestly, I think it's going to be a battle for the majority of the year. Going into the season, I liked the Yankees to win the division. I did think there was some value on Baltimore once Garrett Cole went down,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't really skipped a beat. I think they still have the best ERA in baseball, maybe specifically starting pitching. I don't know if that included bullpen, and they're doing it without their ace. I mean, you guys, you know, saw Luis Gill pitch a gem against you guys. I mean, he's been incredible for them. So I think it's going to be a pretty tight race, into September, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, who they end up acquiring, both the Orioles and Yankees. I mean, I assume they're obviously both going to be buyers. If someone could like shore up the back end of the lineup, or maybe even one more bullpen arm, I think it would make a pretty big difference. But I think we're going to see them battling out for that top spot for another 4 months.
Yeah, for sure. And especially after Cole comes back. I still don't know quite what that timeline looks like, but it didn't seem like he was going to be out all season. So that'll be scary. But hey, Dylan Cease is doing great on the Padres.
He looks great, and he actually, not to be mean, but he looks pretty happy to
Yeah,
be on such a talented team and not have to worry about all the BS that's going on in the clubhouse and with ownership. So I'm happy for him.
he did. He made a comment about last season in Chicago and how he just didn't like it there. It seemed like, it wasn't, he said it wasn't enjoyable in really any way. That was his quote.
It did seem like there was a pretty big divide in the locker room between some guys that obviously left and some of the guys that are still there. But I do know I'm a big fan of Ethan Katz. I think he's one of the sharper pitching coaches and baseball pitching minds in baseball. So I know that you guys have a really good one there, and we've seen him make some pretty good adjustments with guys this year
Yeah.
for the Sox.
Yeah. I mean, he made great adjustments with Dylan. He was our ace all of last year. Like, he was wonderful. Um, and he's made like decent changes. Like, he's put Michael Kopech in more of a closer role, which can be dicey. I feel like in the high leverage situations, it seems dicey, but at the same time, he's still throwing the ball over 100 miles an hour.
No, it really we were talking about, potential trade deadline moves, and he could be someone that if, I don't like what the White Sox have done with him over the last few years. I kind of think
Mhm.
that they've kind of messed with him when he hasn't been necessarily 100%, and they just keep
Yeah,
putting him out there for I don't know why. But this is a great way to kind of like build his value, and I assume they're going to try to flip him at the deadline, and someone will be really lucky to have him pitching, their seventh or eighth inning.
I do find that any White Sox pitcher ends up way better on another team after they leave. I've seen this in Chris Sale. Ronaldo Lopez is phenomenal in Atlanta right now. Dylan Cease is doing great. Lance Lynn is pretty good. And I was like, you guys were all, well, not Chris Sale. Chris Sale can't be bad, period. But I was like, you guys were all just barely hanging in there on the White Sox. And now you guys are out here just phenomenal. Like, Ronaldo is one of the best pitchers in the league right now. I was like,
He
that's,
he looks great, and they get him to keep his. I mean, not only has he been great for them, but because I know he came up as a starter when you guys got him from the Nationals, I think, and he just looked kind of like just another guy in the bullpen. And I haven't really looked into the changes the Braves have made with him, but yeah, no, he's pitching incredible. And you mentioned Sale. I mean, it just helped with that guy, right? If he's clearly 100% and he's back to being one of the best pitchers in baseball.
yeah. And he got a ring out of that whole trade with Boston.
Right,
So,
I forgot about that.
yeah, I can't ever hate on him. Like, he's an absolutely crazy person, but he's so good. As
Yeah.
long as he's healthy, he's just brilliant. So, do you feel confident going into the season, especially as you're battling the Yankees kind of nonstop?
I wouldn't. I feel like I'm more on like the pessimistic side of as far as Orioles fans go. And this is kind of be kind of a cop out answer, but honestly, I think whoever stays healthy between those teams, the healthier team, is probably ends up on top. I am pretty confident in the lineup and our hitting ability. But I do think, I mean, I'm also praying that this is just kind of a 1 year and done thing for Soto in New York because he completely changes that whole lineup once. I mean, you saw it over the past couple days. If him and Judge are raking, like it's a impossible offense to really stop.
Yeah, and then when Stanton does heat up, it's brutal. Like, they just have some of the best hitters in baseball right now. Just top 3, top 5 even. They're not a fun team to face, I can tell you that. Um, we will take a very quick break, and then we will get into talking about this matchup. And we are back. So we had to figure out the pitching matchups on our own because as we were recording, it's not listed. So if you are listening and we are completely inaccurate, blame MLB.com. So it looks like for the White Sox, we will probably see Chris Flexen, Eric Fetty, and Garrett Crochet. I learned just moments ago that Brad Keller had been DFA'd because I was too busy yesterday to read anything. And then O's will likely have Grayson Rodriguez, Corbin Burns, unfortunately, Dean Kramer, and Kyle Bradish. So, what can you tell me about this rotation for the O's?
So I'm probably going to sound a little bit like a homer here, but I do think the Burns, Bradish, Grayson, like Burns is a legitimate ace that nobody will really
Yeah.
argue. I do think that Grayson and Bradish are, if not aces, like legit number twos. Bradish had a little elbow scare in January, so I think he's only made 3 starts, but he had a huge breakout last year. He started throwing his slider a lot more and his curveball and just start racking up the Ks. Grayson struggled a little bit last year in his rookie year to start, and then he just came up and he said he wanted to go back to being the power pitcher that he knows he is, and he's just blowing people away with the high heat. So the bad news is you're facing 3 of their toughest pitchers, but at the same time, you get probably their worst pitcher as well in Dean Kramer, who's mostly like a innings eaters. They just he just kind of wants to go out there and throw 200 innings this year, which would be great for the team. His strikeouts are up a little bit this year, but he's not somebody that I'm that confident in being, better than like I think league average is pretty much best case scenario for him.
Mm-hmm. It's good to know. Yeah, you have unfortunately the best pitchers. Ooh, I can't talk. Eric Fetty has been phenomenal. Chris Flexen actually better. Garrett Crochet, I think between him and Fetty, they're kind of the best of the best. And Crochet has just been phenomenal. I went to opening day and he was pitching, and I was just blown away. They lost that game, but he was so good, and he had managed to get, I think it was 9 strikeouts in that game, and he was on a pitching limit because he's not been a starter since school, and then he had been out for a whole season with Tommy John, and I don't think anybody knew going into this season how it was going to actually work out because he was great in the bullpen. He was scary in the bullpen, but I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'm kind of eating my words from me saying, why on earth is he going to be starting?
Well, I don't really blame you because the timing of that was like a little weird, right? I think there's only a week or two left in spring training. It wasn't like in the beginning of spring, they're like, okay, we're moving this guy to the rotation and then Kopech to the bullpen. It was kind of like a late kind of, hey, I think we might have something here. Let's throw him out there. And if you look at his numbers so far, all of his surface stats like ERA are really inflated. His advanced stats are incredible. So I'm expecting, a ton of positive regression for him. The weird thing is, so the Orioles have a lot of lefties in their lineups, or they can stack a lot of lefties, but over the past couple weeks or a month, they've struggled more versus righties and are hitting lefties extremely well. So it'll be interesting, like kind of strength versus strength in that Crochet versus the Orioles matchup. I'm really curious to see, I do a lot of betting. I'm curious to see how big, I don't think the Orioles will be very big favorites in that game. Who did we have there? Sunday. Wait, unless that was Burns going, then maybe they will be. But again, like Crochet is like a legitimate, I think like top of the rotation guy in baseball. And you mentioned flexing. I think he showed a little bit of improvement when they moved him to the bullpen, or he made a couple relief appearances. And then the Yankees kind of put a couple crooked numbers up on him.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Fetty. What was weird is I don't know if he took less money, but he chose the White Sox over some other organizations that were probably, better destinations. But
Yeah. He chose the White Sox. Tommy Pham chose the White Sox, but that was just because he said taxes would be lower. But I'm like, I don't think you know much about real estate in Chicago.
that's one guy I didn't understand. I mean, I kind of understand. He's not someone, I mean, he rubs people the wrong way. I think he's like, I obviously don't know him personally. I think he's one of those guys like a little misunderstood. He's just like so
Mhm.
passionate and so competitive. Like he puts everything he has into the game, and he gets really frustrated when he sees other people either wasting talent or not committing the same amount of time. And he's off to a great start, which I'm
Mhm.
really happy for him because I enjoy watching him. He plays. He's one of those guys where he's giving it. You can see him on the field, just giving it everything he has every single play.
Yeah, at first I wondered that was another one of those times where I was like, why? Why? What is going on? But I agree. I think he is misunderstood. And at the end of the day, I think he is just there to do what he loves, and that's baseball, and get paid. But it does seem like once he came onto the team, the whole attitude kind of shifted, and they were doing a lot better. He was constantly hitting the ball and setting an example for like these youngsters on the team of, no, you need to be doing this. You're again wasting potential. Um, so he kind of, I don't know what he said. Maybe he had like a very passionate locker room speech, but he kind of turned this team around to where they were finally winning games. So I'm thankful for that.
I mean, it's a legitimate like I don't want to say like he's a threat in the lineup. Like he definitely adds more respectability to the lineup. And I think like especially if there's a lot of young guys seeing this, how old is he? Like 34, 35 out there busting his butt every day. Like, are you really just gonna mail it in and then probably take the chance of having Tommy scream at you at any given point? Like, I don't think they want to take that chance.
No, but I've liked him since he's been here. So speaking of threats in the lineup, who is the biggest threat on this O's team for the White Sox right now?
It's Gunnar Henderson, playing shortstop, and I think he's batted leadoff every game except for one. I mean, we need like they have a bunch of top prospects, number one overall prospects, and talented guys, like including Adley. But it's been amazing to watch. I don't want to say he's like breaking out at like 21 or 22, but we're seeing the long ball and a lot of power, and he's a legitimate like MVP candidate. I think he'll have a tough time beating out one of those Yankee sluggers in New York. But I definitely think he'll finish in near the top in contention, and he plays a great defensive shortstop. And it's really cool to have a star 22-year-old playing shortstop and hitting bombs out of the leadoff spot.
Yeah, for sure. So is Gunnar the main key to take this series, or like what are the keys for the Orioles to just at least take, I don't know, 3, I guess?
I'll be honest, I'm not so much worried about I think they'll get to Flexen. They won't have too much trouble there. We talked about the Keller game. Now that he's DFA'd, I don't know if that's going to be a bullpen game for the White Sox or if they'll call somebody up.
Yeah.
But I think it might be safe to kind of at least give those 2 games to the Orioles. And then you guys got to end up with the crochet. You guys got to come out on top on that one. But I'll probably safely project 3 out of 4 wins visiting the White Sox.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. And then do you have any actual fears heading into the series? Because I talked about how Crochet is good, but our hitting isn't always great.
To be honest, not really. The bullpen, I mean, we talked about like your back end of the bullpen being pretty good, but if they do go to a bullpen game on Friday and kind of use a bunch of arms there, that puts them in a really tough spot for the weekend against a team that doesn't swing at many bad pitches. Like what you'll notice with this Orioles team is they're up there looking for specific zones and specific pitches, and they're probably not gonna like they have one of the lower strikeout rates in baseball. So like they're swinging at their pitches that they know they can do damage with. I think I'm most interested to watch them against Fedde, kind of a veteran guy that's not going to overpower you with velocity. He's out there actually pitching, so we'll see how his veteran presence handles all these kids in the Orioles lineup.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm done with this part of it. So this is where I like to just open it up to MLB at large and
Okay.
what you're feeling. What are you thinking about? Hot takes, any of that?
All right, let's see. We could talk a little bit about we could talk about I'm a little curious to see how you think like the AL Central kind of shakes out with the Royals kind of. Do you think like they're for real? The Twins the Twins have lost 7 in a row after winning like 14 in a row. I didn't even realize that.
They had to throw out their ham or whatever that was.
That was disgusting, by the way.
I know.
I think it was a sausage.
Yes, the sausage. That's what it was.
They like snuck it into Canada too, apparently.
Ugh. I went to Canada and I was super nervous because we drove up and I packed all this fruit and I didn't look at like things that are prohibited for crossing this border. And so we are super close to this border, and I'm finally like looking at it and I was like, crap, we need to pull over and just eat as much of this as we can so it does not go to waste.
Wait, what isn't allowed? Is like you can't like bring like oranges into Canada, or
yeah, there are like really strange rules about bringing food in, and I don't know, but
That's weird.
they didn't even check. And so the kids ate way too many grapes and strawberries, and they didn't even look in our trunk.
Oh, your kids must have been like, "Thanks a lot, mom. Like, good thing we pulled over and made us shovel all this fruit. Like, were you lying to us?" That's pretty funny though.
Oh, anyway, yeah, I don't know how they snuck that in. Um, yeah, AL Central. I do think the Twins, or not the Twins, the Royals are kind of legit. They've been great. They're way above 500. I do think the Guardians are going to end up winning that, but I think the Tigers might not be too far behind the Guardians. I think the Twins are going to plummet pretty soon. I mean, they've already lost 7 in a row, so I think they'll be bottom dwellers with the White Sox very soon.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I don't understand what's happening there, right? They're either like winning every single game or losing. Like you said, I don't know if they need a new sausage or something like that. But I agree with you. Like, I know a lot of people were betting on the Royals to win the Central going into the season. I didn't so much buy into that. I mean, I do. They're obviously a lot more competitive. They signed a couple of guys that I wanted the Orioles to look at, and Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo. Lugo, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, surprisingly. So I know that if they kind of keep getting that kind of outings from him where he's looking like a legitimate ace, I do think they'll be at least competing for that division. It'll be interesting to see um, how the Guardians continue to manage without Quan.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Twins just have so many injuries to their lineup. I don't really know what to expect out of them, but I agree with you that I think it'll be kind of Cleveland and Kansas City kind of battling for that top spot.
Yeah, which I never thought I would say Kansas City is going to be battling for a top spot in the AL Central, um, outside of 2015.
Oh
When
man, when
they
I think they knocked my Orioles out that year. What's interesting about Kansas City is like I feel like they were smart enough to realize that they don't have all the answers, and they
Yeah,
sent all their pitchers, or not all of them. They sent them out to like another company to get pitching analysis and have them work on their pitch shape and those types of things um, out of the franchise, which you don't see. I mean, it's become more common, obviously, in the last few years, but I thought it was a pretty sharp move for them to realize, hey, maybe we don't have all the answers. Let's try to get some help here. And it's really working out.
they also gave the White Sox all of their rejects and washed up players. We have Benintendi, who's the largest contract, who's just garbage. There are like 35 other Royals on this team out of the 40-man roster, I think. But then we also got Pedro, who is a terrible manager. I'm sorry, he's so bad. And then our new GM is Chris Getz, and I hate him with a fiery passion.
Yeah, he made a lot of comments early on. Didn't sound like the smartest guy, or didn't seem like he had the best vision. And I follow a lot of White Sox, so I see that Royals bit quite often. It's kind of brutal, huh? Like the Royals are finally good because they gave the White Sox all their bad players. And I'll be honest, I thought Benintendi was going to be an absolute superstar in the league after his first
Mhm.
couple years in Boston, and I don't really know what happened to him. I don't know if it was injuries, but yeah, he's not really a guy you want at the top of the lineup.
No. And then back with Chris Getz, he was running our farm system for the longest time, and our farm system was one of the worst in the league. So if you're failing at that job, why on earth should you be called up to do an even bigger job? Like the White Sox didn't even have interviews. They were like, nope, it's going to be Getz. End of story.
And that goes back to like what ownership and just kind of having wanting guys in there that he can kind of control.
Mhm.
And I mean, who thought that their manager like they would get even a worse manager after Tony, which I would have never I would have bet all my money that whoever you guys get will definitely be better than Tony La Russa, and that's just not the case.
I mean, yeah, we hated Tony. He was awful. Pedro somehow makes me miss Tony in some ways. And then we went from Rick Hahn, who I also just despised. He was a terrible GM to somehow downgrading from Rick Hahn. I don't know what the deal is with just bringing in these awful, awful people, but that's the White Sox way these days.
And then one last thing I saw that what Reinsdorf, he wanted what like $1 billion in public funding at this new stadium site or something like that. It's like when he's like literally trying to, it looks like he's trying to run the team into the ground and at the same time asking for over $1 billion. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they kind of laughed him right out of that meeting.
Good.
Which, yeah, he's a billionaire. He can't fork over a little bit of money if he wants this new stadium. And
Well, I was
there's,
there a couple years ago. The stadium looked good. I mean, it
yeah,
was like a good ballpark. Maybe focus on trying to get a decent product on the field before you
yeah.
ask for a brand new stadium with public funding.
I
Because
think
I mean,
he
he's
was jealous because of all the talk with the Bears getting a new stadium,
oh,
which I think they absolutely need. That place is falling apart. But yeah, Sox Park is still in decent shape. It's a nice ballpark. And the last thing we need to do is move into the loop and deal with not as much parking. I mean, the parking situation is already really bad as is. We're moving into the city where there's like Lakeshore Drive, and that's always going to be busy. You're going to be getting that lake effect, cooler air, and it just seems logistically like a nightmare. So I have no idea why he's wanting this to happen so much and why he can't put away a little money himself to do this.
well, I'm glad the city kind of laughed him out of that meeting because, like you said, it like it's just not logically sound with it, especially if you look at his track record and what he's doing to the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just kind of one peg above John Fisher at this point. Just a
I mean
little bit
that's
above
a
him.
fair assessment. And like I told you, I've dealt with a lot of bad owners in all the sports that I love for most of my life too, like Angelos, Dan Snyder, who's finally gone. And also, it's ridiculous. Like if you ask anyone from this area to get rid of both Peter Angelos and Dan Snyder in a span of 2 years, two people that I thought would probably be owning the team for my entire life, it's sometimes it doesn't feel real. So hopefully, you guys get kind of the same luck in Chicago.
I can only hope that he steps down and somebody decent comes in and just completely cleans house, because that needs to be done even before we get better product on the field. They need to just clean house with that front office and management and everything, because it won't get any better under those people. Um, but yeah, I think Jerry is just too stubborn to walk away. I know his son kind of mainly controls the Bulls and their day-to-day operations, but for some reason, like I said earlier, Jerry doesn't want his kids to inherit the White Sox, which thank you. And then there's always been talk of, oh, someone's going to come in and buy the team and move them to Tampa or move them to Nashville. And I mean, these have just been going on for decades now. Nashville has been the more recent one, because
They actually did the same thing. They actually did the same thing with the Orioles. The rumors were Nashville for I'd say at least a couple years, even up until I want to say a month before the rumblings about a new potential owner. It was still teams going to get moved to Nashville, or the Angeloses are going to move to Nashville. So I get it. It seems like that's the one spot that I guess they may. And here's the other thing, right? Like how close he is with Manfred. He's always been like the commissioner's best friend, whether it was Bud Selig or Manfred. So they only really care about making as much money as possible. Like profit is all he really cares about. And
yeah,
if he needs to move the team to get his new stadium, I feel like he's the type of jerk that would do that.
yeah, and he just also doesn't want to pay players a decent
So that's what I
amount.
was going to ask, because do you guys actually like the Bulls payroll is actually like, I don't know how it is compared to the rest of the league, but I know they actually spend money though,
Yeah,
right?
we do. The Bulls do spend money. I couldn't tell you what their largest contract is, but they do. They at least go after players that are good. doesn't always translate, but at least they are trying in that
Right.
aspect. Meanwhile, we've got, let me double check and make sure I have that total right. Oops.
Who is
Yes,
the White Sox highest paid player?
Andrew Benintendi, 5 years for 75 million.
Jeez.
That is the biggest contract in White Sox history, and which is humiliating.
Wait, that's the biggest contract in history?
Yeah,
That
he's
doesn't
being
make any
paid
sense.
so much money for being subpar at best.
That's wild. And then what? Andrew Vaughn is a free agent. Okay, he still has a few more years. But he's a guy that I like him. Hopefully he can kind of put it together, and I think he would probably be better off in a better situation as well, and
Yeah,
with some new hitting coaches or something like that. But I do think he's one of the younger guys that I do like in your lineup. I didn't realize that Benintendi was the largest contract in franchise history. I don't know what they saw there to think that he was worth that. I really wonder what the rest of the market was willing to offer him, because it probably wasn't close to what
yeah.
the White Sox were.
We have a ton of people becoming free agents at the end of this year, which also worries me because we've got Juan Moncada, who is always injured, always. I mean, which sucks. And then Eloy Jimenez, his is up um, this year and has club options for 25 and 26. But we've got Tommy Pham just signed the 1 year, a lot of random pitchers. But yeah, like it's a contract year for a lot of players. And I am so Kopech, he's another one. Uh,
Yeah, it really would make the most sense for Kopech and Pham to both get traded at the deadline. Like, I think that's kind of what they're kind of angling towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to have a team at this point. It's going to be Luis Robert Jr. only, and that's just for and Andrew Benintendi because he's going to be here forever.
And nobody's going to take that $17 million a year off
Yeah,
their hands.
no. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next year. I was already kind of lost this year because we got rid of everyone, and I went in. I usually get like a shirt or something with a player. I don't like to buy jerseys, but I'll at least get like a player shirt. And I'm walking into their store, and I was like, I don't know who I like enough at this point because I have a Kopech shirt.
Wait, so who did you end up with?
I got Liam Hendricks off the clearance rack.
Honestly, I love that. I
Yeah,
think you made the best choice possible. So I'm completely on board with that.
yeah, but I'm just like, there's not a player on this team right now that either will be here after next year or that I like enough. So it's
Well,
gonna
if it
be
makes you feel any better, like the Orioles definitely have to bottom out for like what 4 or 5 years, if maybe probably longer before. And like you said, right, it's not just you're not going to get better by signing a player or two. Like you need to reconstruct the entire front office, scouts, and like strip the whole thing down and just start over again with some people that actually know analytics and
mhm.
are hip to what's happening in baseball these days, and not someone like Tony La Russa or whoever Reinsdorf handpicks to be his guy.
And I know Pedro Gafal, is he trusts LaRussa. Like he still asks him for advice. And I'm like, why? Why he was asleep in the dugout half the season. Why are you still going to him? There's a reason why he's no longer here. I mean, he stepped away for health reasons, but I don't think he was going to stay any longer, healthy or
Right. And
not.
just the wild thing is like the consistent just clubhouse issues. It's like, why don't you get somebody that's not a LaRue? But I mean, again, you keep going back to it. They're all Reinsdorf guys. Like he
Mhm.
wants someone in there that's gonna listen to what he says, and so that like he's always in control. And like you see how it kind of played out in the clubhouse. And even looking at the roster, like Martin Maldonado for 4 million. Like, has anyone like he was only in the lineup the last few years because of Dusty Baker? Like he's a great defensive catcher, or he calls a great game. But other than that, this guy shouldn't be playing more than like 40 games a year max at this point in his career.
Especially we have a young, this rookie, Corey Lee, who has actually been pretty good. And he's on the bench every game, it feels like.
I mean, there's no reason to start like a 37-year-old catcher when you only have like 15 wins on the year.
Yeah, no, a lot of their moves just do not make any sense. A lot of the people that they put out on the field, again, we're just like, why? Why is Gavin Sheets in the outfield right now? Why is
It's
Eloy
one thing to go into the season with him being like your fifth outfielder, but to go and be like, yeah, we're starting Gavin Sheets in right field, like what?
I don't understand why they think these lineup, like the lineups they construct every single day when I go and look at it, I'm just like, why? I'm not going to watch this game. There's no point in watching this game.
I don't blame you. If it makes you feel any better, the one way I got through watching my, Orioles and all those horrible years is I bet against them pretty often in the team total market, where you're essentially just betting that the other team scores more than X amount of runs. So with the horrible bullpen, the horrible starting pitching, I pretty much just bet that their opponent would score more than 4.5 runs every time. And like, I know I'll probably be on that bet at least 2 games against your White Sox in the weekend series. I'll probably stay away from the Crochet game.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I don't really know what to expect from Fedde, but I totally expect the O's to put up 5+ runs in those 2 other games.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I mean, they're going to put up a lot of runs. Again, I've only become more mean and pessimistic throughout this season on visiting dugout. I'm just like, yeah, you're gonna sweep us, it's fine. Like, just admit it. Or I mean, I still keep the question in of, do you have any fears heading into this series? And people are just like, no, not really.
Yeah, I think that was the toughest question you asked me. I'm like, gotta think of something.
No,
But I mean,
people just need to
the
be
thing is,
honest.
it's not that you're not being like overly pessimistic. Like, you are pointing out like the few bright spots and the guys that like are performing well and actually seem to care.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to be positive about a team that is 14-34 and mailing it in May and April.
Yeah. That you say mailing it in. That's exactly how I'm seeing Andrew Benintendi right now. He's gonna get paid no matter what. He's not a spring chicken anymore. I think he's just going out there because why not? He doesn't have to show up. The team's horrible.
Right. The only person that's going to yell at him is potentially Tommy Pham, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. So it's hard to come up with these bright spots, but there are some. And I still get to hang out with my friends. We have that milkshake that people seem to love. We've got some things going
and
for us.
Crochet is like that's like a legitimate reason to watch every 5 days.
Yeah.
And Fedde too. We'll see how long if he's around. But he's also been a pretty good guy. But like, Crochet is different because he's like elite. He has a chance to be like one of the better pitchers in baseball. So that is a pretty big bright spot.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, we have a White Sox Twitter war about the poor new play-by-play announcer.
Well, you got rid of literally the best play-by-play announcer in professional sports. So
Yeah.
I don't totally blame you.
Yeah. He seems okay. He's just a little naive. But I don't think a single person worked with him to kind of gain that White Sox lore. The whole thing ended up he mispronounced Bill Veeck's name. But again, when you look at how Veeck is spelled and you have not heard it out loud necessarily, like you could read everything about him. That doesn't mean you're going to get that pronunciation right, And he mispronounced it on TV, and the radio station just went off about how bad he is and just the worst. You'd think he shot someone.
But I mean, to be fair, that is like one of the things that he should definitely know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're given like pronunciation guides at the start of spring training, and like bro, this is your job that you do every day. You should probably know how to pronounce everybody's name
Yeah.
at the very least, right?
They just destroyed him. And so now, like, there's a battle with our new play-by-play on this radio station. And the new play-by-play guy is calling people like losers and haters. Yeah, it's a hot mess right now in Chicago.
That's not how you win over a fan base that just lost like one of the best play-by-play announcers in sports.
Yeah, so it's odd though because he like on opening day, he was out in Lot B tailgating with fans. And he was back just a few days ago tailgating with fans, like taking pictures, being friendly. And then he goes on and just I don't know what's happening. And I know that Jason's shoes were impossible to fill. So he was going to be screwed no matter what. He was going to face a lot of criticism, but oh man, it's brutal. There are people that are sticking up with him and think, no, he's fine. Just he's new. Give him a break. And then there are people that are like, he needs to be fired. Like, serve me his head on a platter.
So it's probably somewhere in the middle, and not to get too, go back too far, but growing up, because bedtime and things like that, I listened to a lot of Orioles games on the radio with John Miller, who's now with the Giants, and Peter Angelos fired John. I don't know if he technically fired him or just didn't re-sign his contract because he said some negative things, or he wasn't that positive about the Orioles outlook or something like that. And he's still working with the Giants like 20 years later, and obviously he's going to be a Hall of Fame broadcaster. So it's tough because I mean, you nailed it, right? Like he doesn't know what you guys have been through over the last few years. I mean, these people become like fans and like ambassadors to the team and to the fans, and just losing that while only winning 15 games is just like somehow obviously makes everything worse.
Yeah.
It'd be a little easier to be bad having your guy calling the game and having, misery loves company, and it makes it a lot worse that you're without him at this point.
I mean, you're stuck in a booth with Steve Stone, who is turning into such a grumpy old man and is known
he's like a legit
that's true, but he's like blocking people on Twitter that say anything to him. And now John's blocking people on Twitter, and I'm just like, okay,
it's just such a bad look, because like I said, I follow like probably more White Sox fans than like any other team, maybe as many as the Orioles, but like I do see a lot of pictures some people draw and kind of send to them, and like it's really funny. It's not stuff that like you should be blocking fans for, like as long as they're not like vulgar or getting personal. Like, come on, man, like let's have a little fun here. This is supposed to be fun.
If you say anything negative about the White Sox, he will block you. Like, and then he was like, I mean, that's where kind of the infamous tweet of "enjoy the ride" came from with Steve Stone. Just being like, well, if you don't like it, jump off and blah, blah, blah. Okay, Steve, come on. So the whole organization is just kind of rotted at this point, and they're not going to fix anything until you cut the head off of the snake. But I just am in disbelief every single day I check my Twitter account. I'm just like, oh, what are we fighting about today? White Sox Twitter.
And it's sad because like you guys are like you guys care a lot about the team, and it's just a passionate group that loves the game, and you just have an owner that's screwing you guys over every chance he gets.
Yeah. Oh, but maybe it'll get better one day. I mean, He's old. He's I think he's 87 last time I looked. Yeah. Oh no, he's 88 now. He just recently had a birthday this year.
We're getting up there, but yeah, no, I did the same thing too, right? With Peter Angelos being listen, I don't want to get too morbid here, but he was on his deathbed for a few years, and I think it's pretty obvious what we were kind of rooting for. But yeah, it's just sad. Nobody born in like 1936 should probably have anything to do with day-to-day baseball operations in 2024, whatever year we're in now. But I mean, the game probably passed him by 15 years ago, and yet he still has his hand in every baseball decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that we need younger ownership. And same with presidential elections. Like, let's get some fresh blood.
Not to make this political, but my favorite joke is if you wouldn't trust somebody to pick you up from the airport, then they probably shouldn't. You shouldn't trust them to the president of the United States. And I don't think I would trust either of these two bozos to pick me up from the
No,
airport.
no. Oh, it just everything is a mess. This world is a mess. Anyway, so now that we are negative, we should wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming back, and please plug yourself. Let people know where they can find you.
All right, over at MLB Dream on Twitter and FTNFantasy.com. I do a few free articles a week and just, always down to talk baseball. So definitely reach out. White Sox, Orioles, or pretty much anything.
Yeah. All right. This has been fun. Thank you. Best of luck in this series. You'll probably get at least 3, but that's fine.
All right. Thanks, Crystal. This was fun as always.
All right. Bye.